TiDB Cloud is the fully managed service delivered by PingCap. It's the easiest way to deploy TiDB. In this video, I'll walk you through some typical scenarios using TiDB Cloud. Create a TiDB Cloud cluster. In this demonstration, you will see how to sign in to TiDB Cloud, select the cloud provider, configure a cluster, and submit the request. To sign into TiDB Cloud, open a browser and type tidbcloud.com. Sign in with your Google ID. From the Active Clusters page, click Create a Cluster. There are 3 primary steps in creating a cluster. Step 1. Provide a cluster name and root password. Step 2. Select the cloud provider and region. There are 2 options available, AWS and Google. For this demonstration, we'll be using AWS. Also, as part of Step 2, select a region. Contact support if the region you're looking for is not in the drop-down list. Step 3, select cluster tier and nodes. The cluster tier will determine the throughput and performance of your cluster after the cluster is created. T3 is standard. You can also select H3, which includes hybrid transactional analytical processing. The number of nodes selected will impact total capacity and billing charges shown on the right of the screen. The last step is to set the number of nodes. You can set the number of TiDB and TiKV nodes respectively by clicking the plus sign to increase and the minus sign to decrease the number of nodes. Click Submit to create the cluster. There are 3 steps in the configuration process: initializing network infrastructure, provisioning nodes, and setting up TiDB cluster. The process will go from creating to normal status and takes approximately 5 to 15 minutes. This concludes the demonstration on how to create a TiDB cluster. Manage user access in TiDB Cloud. In this module, I will demonstrate how to sign into TiDB Cloud, sign out of TiDB Cloud, view the organization, view users within an organization, invite a team member, remove a team member, and set local time zone. There are 3 ways to sign into TiDB Cloud. Option 1, sign up if you don't have a user account. Option 2, sign in using an email and password already associated with an account. And option 3, sign in with your Google ID. After sign-in, you are taken to the Active Clusters screen. For each cluster, you will see the cluster status and cluster configuration information. TiDB version, region, which is a geographic region selected during cluster creation. Tier selection occurs when you create a cluster and determines how resources are allocated for the cluster and also the price. The configuration information for each cluster also shows the number of TiDB nodes, the number of TiKV nodes, the cluster creation time and date, and the cluster creator's email address. To view organization, in the right-hand corner of your screen, click Cluster Owner, then click Preferences. TiDB Cloud creates a hierarchy based on organizations to facilitate the management of TiDB clusters. In the organization's hierarchy, there can be multiple clusters and multiple users. To add a team member to the organization, click User Access, then click Invite. Type in the user's email address and click Confirm. The invited user will show as a member with pending status. At the same time, an email will be sent to the new member with a verification link. When the new member clicks Accept in the email, the member status will change from pending to active. To delete a member, click the Delete button next to the member's name. Click the red bar in the pop-up, indicating that you understand the consequences of deleting a user. The member will no longer be a part of the organization. Modify the system display time by clicking Time Zone. Click the Set Time Zone drop-down select a time zone, and click Confirm. The current setting, time and date, will adjust according to your selection. To sign out of TiDB Cloud, click the cluster owner from the right-hand corner of the screen, and from the drop-down, click Log Out. This concludes the demonstration on how to manage user access in a TiDB Cloud cluster. Scale a TiDB cluster. In this demonstration, I will navigate to the TiDB cluster page and configure TiDB cluster scale settings. Sign into TiDB Cloud. This will take you automatically to the Active Clusters page. Click Settings in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Click Scale from the drop-down list. Scale out by adding nodes, or scale in by subtracting nodes, using the plus or minus sign respectively. TiDB supports scale in and scale out. TiKV supports scale out only, meaning just the plus sign. Contact support for TiKV scale in options. Note that there are billing changes and total capacity changes as you add and subtract nodes. Once you're satisfied with your selection, click Confirm. Status will show as scaling. After 5 to 10 minutes, status will change to normal, indicating the scaling process is complete. This completes the demonstration on how to scale a TiDB cluster. Backup and restore TiDB clusters. In this demonstration, I will set up an automatic backup. I will also run a manual or ad hoc backup. I will then use the manual or ad hoc backup to demonstrate how to restore a TiDB cluster. Sign in to TiDB Cloud. From the Active Cluster screen, click the cluster you want to back up. Click the Backup tab to see the backup options. Select Auto Settings to create an automatic backup. In the Auto Settings configuration screen, notice Backup Cycle defaults to every day. Backup time allows you to select a time based on your time zone, and it will be shown below the drop-down. Limit Backup Files allows you to select the number of backup files created. Backup mode defaults to full. There are storage charges associated with TiDB Cloud backups. The amount is based on average monthly usage, and for more information, please see the documentation on backup storage costs. Click Confirm to accept the next backup start date and time. The automatic backup retention time defaults to limit backup number multiplied by 1 day. To create a manual or ad hoc backup, click Manual on the backup screen. In the Manual configuration window, provide a name for the backup. Start Now shows the current time and date based on your local time zone settings. Click Confirm to start the backup immediately. On the backup screen, an entry for the manual backup will display with pending status, then running status when it starts. When the backup completes, the status will change to success. To restore TiDB cluster data from a backup to a new cluster, click the Restore button next to an available backup. In the Restore window, type a name and password for the restored cluster. The cluster settings will reflect the settings of the cluster backed up earlier. There is also a cost associated shown in the billing calculation. Click Confirm to start the restore process. There are 4 steps in the cluster restoration process: initializing network infrastructure, provisioning nodes, setting up TiDB cluster, recovery TiDB cluster, and the status will change from creating to normal in approximately 5 to 15 minutes. When complete, there will be a new cluster created from the backup of cluster 1. Another way to restore a cluster is to use the recycle bin. The recycle bin is used to store data from deleted clusters with backups. The data, or backup files, will be retained for a duration based on your data plan. To avoid loss, restore to a new cluster before the data plan expires. Note that if the cluster has no backup, a deleted cluster will not appear in the recycle bin. Click Recycle Bin to see if there are any backups available to restore cluster 2, for example. Manual backups will be retained until your account is closed or deleted. Automatic backups will be retained for 7 days after cluster's deletion. In order to retain the data, restore or make a copy of the backup file. Under Action, click Backups. Click the Restore button next to Cluster 2 BKUP to restore that cluster. Provide a name for this cluster and a password. Click Confirm to start the restore. The restore process will initialize the infrastructure, process the nodes, set up the TiDB cluster, and recover the TiDB cluster. The process will take approximately 5 to 15 minutes. The status will change from creating to normal when the process is complete. This completes the demonstration on how to backup and restore a TiDB cluster. Monitor a TiDB cluster. Cluster status shows the status of running clusters on a cluster page. There are 6 cluster statuses. Normal, when the cluster is running normally. Creating, cluster creation running. Scaling, TiDB and TiKV are scaling. Upgrading, during a TiDB version upgrade. Unavailable, TiDB Cloud Service is unavailable. And unhealthy, part of the nodes are unavailable. There are 4 statuses for a TiDB node. Normal, when the node is running normally. Creating, while creating the node. Unavailable, when the TiDB node is unavailable. And terminating, when the TiDB node is terminating. There are 5 statuses for a TiKV node. Normal, when the node is running normally. Creating, while creating the node. Unavailable, when the TiKV node is not available. Terminating, when the TiKV node is terminating. And leaving will indicate that the TiKV node is migrating the current node data before termination. There are several commonly used cluster metrics. The metrics currently available in TiDB Cloud include total QPS, or total queries per second, latency, or query processing time, connections, which refers to the number of server connections, storage size, which is the physical space required, TiDB CPU, or TiDB's usage of processing resources, TiKV CPU, which is TiKV's usage of processing resources, TiKV IO read, which is TiKV's read requests, and TiKV IO write, which is TiKV's IO write requests. This demonstration will show you how to locate cluster status, node status, and monitoring metrics in TiDB Cloud. Sign in to TiDB Cloud. On the Active Cluster screen, notice that Test Cluster has status normal. On the right, there are graphs for 2 key indicators: total QPS, or queries per second, and latency, the time it takes for a query to complete. Low latency indicates minimal delay in execution of queries. You can use your mouse to highlight details for a single point on the graph. Click the cluster name to see all of the commonly used metrics on one page. Metrics are time-dependent, and by selecting one of the options from this drop-down menu, you can set the metric refresh interval. Additional status can be located from the Node Map tab. From the Node Map, you can see the status for each of the TiDB nodes and TiKV nodes. Click Logout under Cluster Owner to complete your session. This completes the demonstration on how to monitor a TiDB Cloud cluster.